The moon base was small and cold. It sat alone in a quiet part of the galaxy, far from any busy space routes or big cities. There were no loud machines, no crowds, just quiet work. A few humans lived there doing research and keeping the place running. They checked weather signals, space dust, and new star patterns. They worked hard, even though no one ever visited. Life was simple but peaceful. Then one day, a dark shape appeared in the sky. It was not a ship anyone had seen before. It moved fast and quiet like a shadow across water. No one had time to call for help, no time to run. The ship belonged to the Zarn Empire. The Zarn were tall, gray, and cold. They spoke in sharp, dry voices. Their armor was black and smooth like polished stone. The humans were pulled from their beds and labs. They were not given time to dress. They were not told why. The Zarn said nothing, only pointed their strange weapons and forced the humans to kneel in the open field. The sun was rising over the moon's rocky hills, turning the ground golden. But no one looked at the sky. All eyes were on the soldiers. There were 10 humans, 5 women, 5 men. Some were older, some were just out of school. One of them wore a necklace made by her daughter. Another held a small picture of his brother. None of them had weapons. None of them fought. They didn't even know what they had done wrong. The leader of the Zarn stood in front of them. He had a sharp face and cold eyes. "These people are spies," he said. "They have looked at things they should not see. They have heard things they should not hear. For that they must be punished." But no one knew what he meant. The humans had not stolen anything. They had not sent any secret messages. They had only watched the stars. They had only listened to the sky. But the Zarn did not care. The decision had already been made. There was no trial, no court, no chance to speak. The humans were forced to stand one by one in front of a steel wall. A large machine pointed at each of them. The sound it made was quiet, a low hum like the wind, then a flash of light, then nothing. One by one, all 10 were gone. The Zarn took their bodies and burned them in the desert behind the base. No grave was marked. No names were spoken, just ashes in the wind. Then the Zarn left. Their ship rose high into the sky and vanished into the stars. Back on Earth, no one knew what had happened at first. The moon base had gone quiet. No signals, no lights, nothing. It was like it had vanished. People waited, they called, they sent messages, still nothing. A rescue team was sent a few days later. When they landed, they found the base cold and empty. Papers were scattered, computers were broken. There were burn marks in the sand, but no bodies, no sign of a fight. The rescue team searched every room. They found the necklace in a drawer. They found the photo under a chair. They knew who had worn those things. These were the 10 missing people, and now they were gone. The truth began to spread. A secret report from a small ship had picked up part of the Zarn broadcast. Just a few words, "spy base removed." That was all, but it was enough. People on Earth were shocked. Families cried. Friends were angry. Leaders asked questions, but the Zarn gave no answers. When asked why the humans were taken, the Zarn only said, "The matter is closed." They said the humans were enemies, but they gave no proof. The galaxy listened, but most said nothing. Some were afraid, others didn't want to get involved. A few whispered, "That's just how the Zarn are." People had heard stories before, stories of ships that vanished, of colonies that were never found again, but no one had ever seen it happen so clearly. Now there was no doubt. The Czarn thought Earth would stay quiet. They believed humans were weak and slow to act. The Czarn had seen humans as soft. They wore no thick armor. Their ships were smaller. Their rules were kinder. They believed Earth would forget. But the Czarn were wrong. Because those 10 people were not nameless. They were not alone. They had families, they had friends, and they had people who could fight back. Some were connected to leaders. Some were loved by builders of great ships. One had a sister who could hack into any system. Another had a brother who trained soldiers. The Czarn didn't just remove 10 workers. They struck 10 hearts, and those hearts began to beat louder. Earth was not a world of silence. It was a world of memory, and Earth does not forget. The burning of the 10 was supposed to be a secret, but now even the stars seemed to whisper about it. Ships in far-off places played quiet songs about the lost. Children drew pictures of the moon base. Messages flew faster than light, telling the story. Even those who had once ignored Earth now watched and wondered. The Czarn had tried to hide the truth, but truth is like light, it finds a way in. In the heart of Earth's command center, a woman named Kira stood before a wall of stars. Her sister had been one of the 10. Kira didn't cry. She had no tears left. She only watched the stars and waited. In a small lab, a man named Jalen looked at the photo of his brother. It was worn and creased. Jalen didn't speak. He didn't sleep. He just stared at the photo. Then he turned on his screen and began to write code. In a training room, a young pilot named Ray hit the wall again and again, her fists wrapped in red tape. Her friend had been on that base. Ray didn't shout. She just trained harder. Every blow was a promise. Around the world, many others began to move. Quietly, carefully, but they moved. People who had power, people who had pain. They began to speak in short messages and silent nods. They met in rooms without windows. They turned off the lights and turned on old machines. They remembered the names, and they made plans. The Czarn still did not care. They did not listen. They did not look. They had made their move. Now it was Earth's turn. But Earth was not going to shout. Earth was not going to warn. Earth was going to show the galaxy what happens when you hurt its people. And this was only the beginning. The 10 humans were not just workers on a faraway base. They were sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, and friends. Each one had a story. Each one had someone who loved them deeply. The Czarn Empire did not see that. They only saw bodies, but Earth saw people. Earth remembered names. One of them was named Lana. She was young, only 24 years old. Lana had grown up in a small town near the mountains. Her dream was always to study the stars. She went to space school and worked very hard. People said she was quiet but kind. She always helped others and never asked for much. Her father, Captain Ryden, was in charge of Earth's defense satellites. He was strong and smart, but when he heard what happened to Lana, he sat down and cried for the first time in years. Lana had always sent him star maps she made by hand. Now his sky felt empty. Another was named Paolo. He was the kind of person who made everyone laugh. He played music in the bass even when the power was low. He once fixed a broken robot by using parts from an old coffee machine. Paolo's best friend was Commander Surrey, a woman who led 5-star fleets. They had known each other since school. She had always told him he was the best mechanic in the galaxy. When she found out he was gone, she didn't speak for 3 days. Then she asked for a private meeting. She didn't want flowers. She wanted justice. Myra was another. She had a deep love for languages. She spoke 12 of them and was learning a 13th. She believed peace came from understanding. She was working on a way to help humans talk to new alien races. Her brother, Kian, was a diplomat. He spoke before leaders of worlds and helped end wars with words. When he found out Myra had been called a spy and burned without trial, he stood before the Galactic Union and demanded they look at the facts. He didn't shout. He just asked one question: would you let this happen to your sister? Then there was Erin. Erin was tough and brave. She had been a firefighter before joining the space team. She once pulled 3 people from a burning lab during an accident. Her mother was General Ruth, head of Earth's search and rescue fleet. General Ruth had seen many hard things, but when her daughter didn't return, she knew this was different. Erin had always sent messages saying she was safe. This time, there was silence, and that silence told her everything. We cannot forget Omar. He was quiet and thoughtful. He liked plants and kept a small garden even on the cold, dry moon base. He believed life could grow anywhere. His cousin, Dr. Yasha, was a top scientist who designed oxygen systems for space colonies. When she heard about Omar, she locked herself in her lab. When she came out, her eyes were red and her voice was clear. "We will not let this go," she said. "They destroyed someone who built life. Now we will show them what humans can build and unbuild." Another lost soul was Dee. She loved to draw. She filled her notebooks with pictures of planets, stars, and her teammates. Her brother was a systems hacker who worked in secret places. He used to tease her and call her Moonbug. When he saw her picture in the list of the missing 10, something inside him broke. He didn't go to her funeral. He went to work. But this time not for money, for her. There was also Cavi. Cavi was known for being smart and full of ideas. He once made a machine that could clean a room using only sound waves. He liked puzzles and solving problems. He had a twin sister, Nari, who was in charge of Earth's deep space listening posts. She was the first one to hear the Zarn message calling the base removed. She played it back again and again, hoping it was wrong. It was. That one word became the seed of her anger. Juno was the team leader on the base. She was steady, calm, and strong. People trusted her. She took care of the group like a big sister. Her younger brother, Liam, was a shipbuilder. He helped design Earth's newest defense ships. When he found out what the Zarn had done, he stopped building. Instead, he took apart what he had made and started designing something else, something faster, smarter, and hidden. Lee was an artist turned space worker. He liked to paint what he saw through the observatory glass. His work was simple but full of heart. His husband, Marcus, worked with Earth's data teams. They had met in college and had just celebrated their anniversary through a video call. When Lee was gone, Marcus sat in his chair for hours, holding the last message Lee had sent him. He said nothing. But later, he reached out to friends in every system who owed him favors. They answered. The last was Anya. She had always wanted to be a teacher. She used to read to the team during their free time. Her laugh could fill a whole room. She wrote stories and planned to publish them. Her uncle, Brant, was a council leader on Earth. He had never spoken much about war or justice. He had always pushed for peace. But when he heard what happened to Anya, he stood up during a world meeting and said, "This is not politics. This is personal." Each of the 10 had people who loved them. Each had left behind someone who would not forget. These were not nameless workers. They were hearts and voices. They were songs and stories. They were hopes and dreams. And the people who loved them were not weak. They were powerful. They were smart. And they were everywhere. Some were in charge of fleets. Some could move whole economies. Some could change the way machines spoke or ships flew. Some could touch hearts. All of them felt the pain. All of them felt the fire that the Czarn had started. The Czarn thought they had removed a problem. Instead, they woke up the people who knew how to answer pain. And they were not just family members. Friends of the 10 began to move too. Old classmates, former teachers, even strangers who had once met them at conferences or shared a ride to the launch pad. One small act of violence had shaken thousands. The story of the 10 moved fast. News channels spoke about it in quiet voices. Kids lit candles by pictures of the moon. Whole schools held moments of silence. Art began to show up online, drawings of the 10 standing together in light. Music videos used their names. A group of singers made a song using words from the letters the 10 had once written home. It was called "We Still Hear You." People everywhere were feeling the loss, but some were feeling more than sadness. Some were feeling something sharper. A pilot named Tane remembered how Lana had once helped him fix a navigation error that could have killed his crew. He owed her his life. A builder named Mina remembered how Paolo had made her laugh when she was scared of her first launch. She owed him her courage. A scout named Bren recalled how Myra had once sent her books during a long solo flight. She owed her her mind. The 10 had done small things for many people. Now those people were ready to do big things in return. And then came the ones who had power, but also secrets. A secret group of defense planners began to hold night meetings. They didn't share their names, but they all had one thing in common. They had known one of the 10. Some had worked with them. Some had trained them. Some had loved them. They now had a reason to act and knowledge on how to do it. Another group of data runners started to pass messages that no one could trace. These were the quiet ones, the watchers and listeners. They didn't show up in the news, but they were the ones who made things move behind the scenes. Many of them had once talked with the 10. Some had trained them in secret skills. One even said, "Juno taught me patience. Now I teach the enemy fear." Even among Earth's youth, things began to stir. A group of young students built a network to share news about the 10 and their lives. They called it Echo 10. It grew fast. Pictures, poems, memories, and even recordings from the moon base were added each day. The Czarn had tried to erase 10 people. Instead, they became a wave. Every story shared became a spark. Every spark lit a fire, and the fires were growing. Across the stars, people began to whisper a phrase, "The 10 are not gone." At first, it was just a message of hope, but slowly it became something else. It became a warning. The Czarn Empire did not notice at first. They didn't care. They had done this before on other worlds, but Earth was different. Earth had long arms, deep memory, and strong hearts. The Zarn had hit 10 targets, but they had missed the hole. And now the hole was waking up. It started with whispers, no big speech, no flashing signs. No one shouted for war. But the pain from what happened to the 10 humans didn't just sit still. It began to move quietly. The first sign came 3 weeks after the Zarn left the moon base. A small cargo ship owned by the Zarn vanished. It was carrying tools and supplies across a trade path near Saturn's rings. The ship had been on time. Everything looked normal. Then it was gone. No signal, no call for help, just silence. The Zarn didn't care at first. They called it an accident. They told their people not to worry. They sent another ship. But this time something strange happened. That second ship returned, but empty. The crew was missing. All the doors had been opened. The power was off. And across one of the walls, someone had drawn a star with 10 points. No one knew what it meant. But back on Earth, people understood. It wasn't just a sign. It was a message. A few days later, a space station that served as a fuel stop for the Zarn shut down. The lights blinked out. Engines failed. Every computer screen turned black. A soft voice played on repeat. "Do you remember the 10? The workers had to be rescued." When the Zarn checked the system, they found nothing broken. No virus. No bugs. But still nothing worked. Then another thing happened. On a far planet called Delmer 5, where the Zarn mined rare crystals, the machine stopped digging. No one could start them again. Some of the workers saw writing appear on their screens. 10 names, 10 lights, 10 reasons. And just like before, a 10-pointed star showed up. The Zarn commander there sent a message back to the capital. He said, "Someone is inside our systems. Someone is watching us." The Zarn leadership laughed. They didn't believe the humans could fight back. To them, humans were too soft, too scattered. The Zarn had power, size, and fear. They ruled by being cruel and fast. They thought small tricks and slow silence could never win. But something had started, something strong, and something quiet. Back on Earth, no one took credit for the attacks. No army stood up and said, "We did this." No leader bragged, but people knew, they felt it. Someone was answering. And whoever it was, they were careful, smart, and angry. A group of old engineers, all friends of Omar, the man who loved plants, started building new machines in a secret lab. These were not machines for war. They were made to cut power lines, slow engines, and confuse enemy systems. They tested them in the shadows. They shared them with old contacts. Each machine was marked with a small symbol, a flower inside a star. In another corner of the galaxy, a pilot named Tane flew close to a Zarn patrol ship. He didn't fire. He didn't speak. He simply passed by and released a small device. Hours later, the patrol ship spun in space, its maps erased and its tools not working. On its main screen, a message glowed. "We remember Paolo." Some actions were even smaller. A trade deal between the Zarn and another planet suddenly failed. The planet's leaders said nothing, but quietly they had decided not to trust the Zarn anymore. They had seen what happened to the 10, and they didn't want to be next. They didn't say it out loud, but they sent a quiet gift to Earth. A book filled with Zarn ship routes. More signs appeared. A supply base in deep space opened its doors one morning to find all its fuel missing. The locks had not been broken. The cameras showed only shadows. On one wall, someone had written with bright blue paint, "You can't hide what you did." A school on a moon near Zarn space taught children history. One day, all their screens turned on at once and played a short video. It showed pictures of the 10 humans, their names, their smiles, and at the end a voice said, "Gone but not forgotten." The teachers could not stop the video. When it ended, the screens shut off and would not turn back on. The Zarn began to get nervous. One leader called a meeting. "It's just small things," she said. "Nothing serious." Another said, "It feels like a joke." But others weren't laughing. A younger officer pointed out that every time they tried to fix something, another problem showed up. "It's not a joke," he said. "It's a plan." And he was right. On Earth, there were no big meetings, no flashing lights, just groups of people working together in secret. Coders wrote new programs. Builders made small tools. Messengers moved through space, sharing what they knew. They didn't work for money. They worked for the 10. A group of teenagers who loved computers built a program called 10 Echo. It could slide into enemy systems without being seen. It didn't break things. It just listened and learned. That program was sent to many quiet corners of the galaxy. It was small. It was silent, but it was everywhere. On one planet, a singer named Jaya wrote a song. It told the story of Anya, the girl who wanted to be a teacher. The song was soft and sweet. It was shared across thousands of ships and planets. Even some Zarn workers heard it and cried. A few even sent secret messages to Earth, saying, "We are sorry. We didn't know." Each small act was like a drop of water. One drop doesn't seem like much, but many drops together can become a wave, and the wave was growing. The Zarn still didn't understand. They sent out warnings. "If humans touch our systems again, we will strike harder." They made speeches. They showed off their weapons, but people were not afraid, because Earth didn't send armies. They sent reminders, reminders that truth cannot be erased. At a busy spaceport, someone painted a large picture of the 10 on a wall. Each person was drawn in bright colors with stars behind them. The Zarn tried to paint over it, but the next morning it was there again, brighter than before. A small ship called the Silver Whisper flew into a Zarn-controlled zone. It was just one ship, no weapons, no warning. It dropped a box near a Zarn guard tower and left. The box opened on its own and played voices, the last messages of the 10 before they died. "We are not spies," one voice said. "We just watch the stars." Then the message ended and the box turned to dust. That day the guard tower shut down for 5 hours. No one could explain why. A young girl on Earth, only 12 years old, wrote a short message. "They thought we would forget, but we didn't, and we won't." That message was posted online. It was simple, but it was shared over and over. Even people in other star systems began to say it. The small revenge had no leader. It had no army, but it had heart. It had memory, and it had meaning. More Zarn systems began to have errors. Maps were wrong. Docks opened at the wrong time. Lights blinked without reason. It wasn't random. It wasn't messy. It was clear. Someone was guiding it all. And every time something strange happened, someone left a clue. A flower, a star, a soft voice saying, "Remember the 10." It was like a ghost that could move through wires and walk through walls, a ghost made of grief and love and fury. The Zarn had taken 10 lives, but they had lit 10,000 sparks. Each spark burned quietly, but they were spreading fast. The Zarn couldn't stop them because they weren't just in one place. They were in hearts, in minds, in memories. They were in music, pictures, poems, code, and silence. The small revenge had become something more. It had become a promise. And the galaxy had started to listen. The Zarn Empire had ruled many star systems for a long time. They were strong, rich, and feared. Many worlds followed their orders because they didn't want trouble. The Zarn believed they were untouchable. After all, they had taken 10 human lives and expected no one to care. For a short while, it seemed like nothing would happen. Earth stayed quiet. No armies marched. No angry voices came from the stars. It seemed like the Zarn had gotten away with it. But then small problems started. At first, these issues looked harmless. A supply ship vanished without a trace. A mining station lost its power for 3 hours. A transport route was blocked by strange space signals. The Zarn leaders called these events simple accidents. They told each other it was just bad luck or old machines. No one thought humans could be behind it. Earth didn't have huge war fleets. Earth didn't have deadly weapons spread across the galaxy. The Zarn laughed at the idea that humans could fight back. However, something didn't feel right. Reports began to pile up. The problems weren't just small, they were spreading. And they always seemed to target Zarn systems. One day, a communications hub stopped working. On another day, a fuel station ran dry, even though it had been full just the day before. It was strange, but the Zarn still ignored it. They believed nothing could truly threaten them. Then patterns began to appear. One high-ranking officer started noticing the strange timing of the failures. He marked them on a map. The dots were not random. They were forming a curve, like a wave sweeping inward toward the center of the Zarn Empire. That worried him. When he looked deeper, he found something more unsettling. At each place where a problem had occurred, someone had left behind a quiet sign. Sometimes it was a symbol. Sometimes it was just the number 10. Other times it was a message written in code. The message was always the same: "We remember." More and more systems began experiencing issues. A sensor station that tracked space rocks was confused by false signals and shut itself down. A cargo ship suddenly turned the wrong direction and had to be rescued. In some places, screens blinked strange images, flowers, stars, or faces that no one recognized. Most of the time, the systems worked again after a few hours, but the fear was already spreading. Something was happening and the Zarn could not stop it. The worst part was that no one knew who was doing it. There were no attacks with lasers, no bombs, no warships, just silence followed by confusion. The Zarn tried to trace the problems. They sent their best engineers, but every time they found nothing. No broken parts, no clear reason, just systems that worked fine until they didn't. Fear started to grow. The Zarn had always believed power meant control, but now they couldn't control their own machines. They couldn't explain the strange changes in their stations and ships. They couldn't explain the messages left behind, and they couldn't find the people responsible. Some officers thought Earth was behind it, but others refused to believe that. They said Earth was too peaceful, too soft, too busy with its own problems to cause real damage. But they were wrong. The people of Earth were not shouting, they were not sending armies, but they were paying attention, and they were responding in a different way. They were using ideas, skills, and patience. They were using memory. The 10 who had been lost were not forgotten. Their names were carried in silence, and that silence had become stronger than sound. In some areas, Zarn workers started to get nervous. They began quitting their jobs. Some refused to work at night. Others said they felt like someone was always watching. One base even reported that their security doors had opened and closed by themselves for 3 days. They checked every wire, every camera. Nothing was broken. Yet the doors kept opening. They finally locked the whole place down. At another location, the main computer system showed a list of names, 10 names. No one knew who had entered them. No one could remove them. The screen froze and stayed that way for several hours. Some of the workers were scared. They said the base was haunted, but it wasn't a ghost. It was a message. Every time something went wrong, a quiet reminder was left behind. A sound, a shape, a word. It always pointed back to the 10 humans who had been killed. The reminders were never loud, but they were always clear. The Zarn Empire had thought no one would care, but now they realized they had made a mistake. The Zarn tried to fix the problems with stronger rules. They added more guards. They shut down stations they believed were at risk. They forced workers to stay longer shifts. But this only made things worse. People became tired. Some started asking questions. Some even started reading the messages and wondering if the humans were right. The damage was not just physical, it was emotional. The Empire's strength came from fear and control, but now fear was working against them. Their own people were starting to feel nervous. The silence was no longer peaceful, it was tense. It was the kind of silence that comes before something big happens. Some Zarn citizens began to speak in secret. They shared the names of the 10 humans. They passed along poems and songs from Earth. They didn't do this to be rebels. They did it because they felt the truth. Something terrible had been done, and now justice was moving like wind through dry grass. Still, the Empire didn't fully understand what was happening. They kept looking for a large enemy, a big attack, something they could fight. But that enemy didn't exist. What they faced was smaller and smarter. It lived in memories, in code, in small acts of kindness and small acts of revenge. Some of the most powerful Zarn leaders started holding private meetings. They were worried. They couldn't show fear in public, but they were afraid inside. Each day brought new questions. Each system brought new problems. And behind every issue there seemed to be the same quiet voice. We remember the 10. The damage was growing even though nothing exploded. Trade slowed, work slowed, trust slowed, and fear kept rising. By now, the Empire had realized that Earth was not weak. Earth had chosen a different path, a smarter path. They were not fighting with weapons. They were fighting with patience, memory, and heart, and that was more dangerous than anything else. One leader tried to erase the messages from their system, but the next day, every wall in their base was covered with writing, words made of light. They read, "You tried to erase us, but we are the ones who remember. That was when even the most powerful Zarn commanders began to worry. They started to speak in softer tones. They gave fewer orders. They stopped bragging, because now they knew something important. Earth was not staying quiet because it was scared. Earth was staying quiet because it was watching and waiting. Far away from the noise of the stars, Earth stayed silent. No big speeches were made. No war was announced. But Earth was not sleeping. Quiet things were happening under the surface. Deep in mountains, under oceans, and inside secret space stations, people were meeting. They were not meeting to talk, they were meeting to act. These people were not all soldiers. Some were scientists. Some were builders. Some were engineers, teachers, or even artists. But all of them had one thing in common. They had lost someone, and they remembered. They had not forgotten the 10 humans the Zarn had taken. They had not let that pain turn cold. They had kept it burning inside like a small fire waiting to grow. In a dark room below the Earth's surface, lights glowed on a round table. Around that table sat leaders from every part of the world. Some wore uniforms, others wore suits. A few wore nothing special at all. No cameras were there. No news reporters asked questions. This meeting was not for show. It was for something bigger. The room had no windows, no names on the walls. Each person at the table had a file in front of them. Each file had the same picture, 10 faces, 10 names, 10 people who should still be alive. No one spoke at first. Then one woman, a tall general with gray hair, placed her hand on the photo. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't shout, but her words were clear. "We are not here for revenge," she said. "We are here for truth, and we are here to protect what remains." Everyone nodded. The plan had already begun. In fact, it had been forming since the day the news came from the moon base. The very moment Earth heard about the 10, something had shifted. People who once worked alone began working together. Departments that had never shared data started opening files. Walls between groups began to fall. The pain had united them. In the oceans, deep under the waves, small machines were being tested. These machines were not for war. They were for hiding, for listening, for learning. They could travel through water and space without being seen. They could enter systems and find weaknesses. They were not fast, but they were smart, and they had already started their journey. Up in space, hidden near the cold moons of Jupiter, a new type of satellite spun quietly. It didn't send out strong signals. Instead, it listened. It caught messages from Zarn ships, studied their paths, and sent the data back to Earth. That satellite had no weapons, but its memory was long and deep. It was called Lantern, named after one of the 10. In labs across Earth, coders worked day and night. They didn't write normal programs, they wrote ghost code. These codes could live inside other systems without being noticed. They didn't break anything. They didn't destroy. They watched. They waited. And when the right moment came, they could do things no one expected: turn lights off, open doors, change maps, confuse orders. Other teams were building different things, machines that looked simple but could do complex tasks. Small flying drones that could carry messages across galaxies. Tools that could shut down power without making a sound. Even food wrappers that changed color when near a certain type of alien tech. These weren't weapons in the old way, but they were strong in a new way. Secret ships were also being built, not big ones with loud engines, but smaller ones. These ships were made to move through places where no one looked. They used shapes and materials that didn't reflect light. They didn't show up on radar. They could land without sound and leave without notice. Only a few people on Earth even knew they existed. They were called whispers. At the same time, new training centers opened. Not in public, not in cities, but in places no one would think to look: empty deserts, icy mountains, deep forests. These centers trained young minds to think in new ways, not just to fight, but to read systems, fix failures, understand patterns, and find the soft spots in any wall. They were not building an army. They were building a response. Each person trained in those centers learned the same names every day, not the names of generals or kings, but the names of the 10. Those names became their promise. Earth also worked with its friends in the galaxy. Many other worlds had also suffered under the Zarn, but they had been too scared to speak. Now Earth gave them a reason. Secret messages were sent. Quiet meetings were held. Many leaders of small planets replied with only one word: yes. Together they began to share secrets. Maps, tools, codes, even food and fuel. They didn't want to build a new empire. They wanted freedom. And they had learned that Earth was not there to rule. Earth was there to stand with them. Earth's leaders didn't all agree on everything. Some wanted to move faster, some wanted to wait. But they all knew one truth: the plan had to be built with care. One wrong step and the Zarn would strike harder. One loud move and the shadows would vanish. So the plan was built like a puzzle. Each piece fit in silence. Each part was tested, checked, and improved. And while the Zarn watched the skis, Earth worked below, inside the wires, beneath the lights, behind the screens. Even the artists helped. Painters, singers, storytellers. They told the story of the 10 in ways that spread across the stars. They didn't need loud voices. They used color, sound, and memory. Songs were carried on data waves. Images were printed on the sides of supply boxes. Poems were sent inside code. People didn't always know what they were reading, but they felt it. And Earth waited. They didn't push. They didn't attack. They let the plan grow. Every whisper, every step, every quiet act was part of something bigger. One night in a small room on a mountain, a young scientist looked at a screen and smiled. She had finished a program that could read Zarn language in seconds. It could translate their words into pictures and feelings. With it, Earth could understand every message the Zarn sent. She named it Aaron, after the firefighter who had died on the moon base. In another place, a farmer built a sensor in his barn. It looked like a weather tool, but it could hear Zarn ships coming before they were near. He had once grown food for Earth's space teams. Now he was part of the plan. Across the ocean, a student in a wheelchair built a map that showed where Zarn mistakes had happened. He didn't do it for money. He did it because his sister had once worked with Paolo, the mechanic who died. The map was so clear, Earth's planners started using it every day. Every person mattered. No one was too small. That was the heart of the plan. It wasn't about one great leader. It was about many small lights coming together to make something bright. And slowly, the plan became real. One small tool at a time. One quiet mind at a time. One brave memory at a time. The Czarn still believed they were in control. They still moved their ships, gave their speeches, and scared weaker planets. But they didn't know what was happening under their feet. They didn't know how many eyes were now watching them. They didn't know that their wires carried Earth signals. Their lights flickered because of Earth's reach. Their systems hummed because of Earth's touch. And still, Earth said nothing. No threats. No flags. No armies. Only memory. Only planning. Only quiet, steady work. Because Earth wasn't trying to win fast. Earth was building something that could not be stopped. Earth was making sure that what happened to the 10 would never happen again. The plan was ready. Earth had waited, watched, and prepared. Now it was time to act, but not in the way the Czarn expected. There were no loud weapons. There were no giant battleships. There were no cities turned to ash. Earth didn't want to destroy everything. Earth wanted to send a clear message: you hurt the wrong people, and we did not forget. The first target was a small Czarn outpost floating near a gas cloud. It wasn't a big base, but it helped the Czarn keep track of many space routes. It had computers, scanners, and sensors that watched ships move between planets. One morning, all of those machines stopped. Not broken, just silent. The workers couldn't turn them back on. The base floated there, blind and confused. Then, without sound, one of Earth's hidden drones left a single image on every screen, a flower inside a 10-pointed star. That was it. No damage, no fire, just a quiet sign: we're here now. Across the galaxy, something similar happened at a mining station. The machines stopped digging. The power faded. Workers ran around trying to fix everything, but nothing worked. Every tool, every sensor, every button just went dark. Then the name Lana appeared in soft letters on the main wall. Lana had been one of the 10. No one said a word. The station shut down, and Czarn leaders had no answer. These events kept happening. In another part of space, an energy plant lost control of its power. Not in a dangerous way. It didn't explode. It didn't burn. It just gave energy to the wrong places. Lights blinked in empty rooms. Heat flowed into storage tanks instead of homes. For 10 whole hours, the station was useless. It wasn't broken, just confused. The workers were sure they had been hacked. But when they checked the systems, they couldn't find any damage. On the main screen, someone had drawn 10 small dots, like the 10 people Earth had lost. Ships began turning around without being told. Some moved slowly in circles. Others played soft music through their speakers, music only Earth could write. It was sad and beautiful. It made some of the Czarn officers angry, but it made others quiet. One ship, known as the Talon's Eye, stopped in deep space and couldn't move. Its power was still on. Its tools still worked, but it could not go forward. Something in its systems had locked the engines. No one knew how. When the Czarn engineers opened the engine room, they found a tiny human message burned into a panel. It read, "For Paulo." Paulo had been the ship mechanic who died on the moon base. Even after they erased the words, the engines would not work for 2 more days. Back on Earth, the team didn't cheer. They didn't laugh. They just kept working. Every success was part of the plan. No attack was done to scare. Each one was done to remind. Earth wasn't looking for war. Earth was demanding respect. Next came the factories. The Czarn used huge machines to build ships and weapons. These machines worked day and night, run by commands from faraway control rooms. One day, the machines started making the wrong parts. A gun barrel too short, a ship wing too heavy. Each mistake was small, but they added up fast. Orders were delayed. Factories had to stop. Workers stood around with nothing to do. Again, there was no smoke, no bombs, but the power of Earth's plan was clear. A single line of bad code had changed everything. That code had been placed by a program called Hollow, written by a teenager whose cousin had been one of the 10. That teen had worked in silence, never telling anyone but his small team. Now his work was slowing the whole Czarn war machine. On a Czarn-controlled planet known for farming, all the water pumps failed. Crops began to dry up. The people didn't understand. Their tools had worked just fine the day before, but now nothing responded. When they looked at the sky, a long white cloud spelled out a strange pattern. It was a human code, barely visible but real. That night, the same image was found drawn in the dirt by one of the farmers. He didn't know what it meant, but somehow he felt it mattered. Every day brought another quiet strike. A starport full of cargo shut down when all its doors refused to open. A library's records were changed to include human songs. A repair center found all its blueprints rewritten. Each change was clean, quiet, and smart. Earth's hands were invisible, but their fingerprints were everywhere. The most powerful part was that no one got hurt. Earth had decided not to kill. The goal was not pain, it was truth. The Czarn had taken 10 lives without justice. Now, Earth was showing what real power looked like. Soon, Czarn commanders began giving new orders: protect the control rooms, guard the computer centers, but it didn't help. The damage had already been done. Earth was not trying to win with size or force. Earth was winning with thought, care, and memory. In space, a group of Czarn scouts found their navigation tools scrambled. They couldn't tell which direction was forward or back. When they tried to send a message for help, all their screens lit up with one word: Aaron. That had been the name of a young woman who loved to study stars. She was one of the 10. The scouts floated there, helpless, until someone from a nearby planet helped them return. On that planet, the people had started to wear small pins shaped like 10-pointed stars. These people weren't human. They were another species, once loyal to the Czarn, but they had seen enough. They had felt the change. Earth's message had reached them. They no longer feared the Empire. Now they believed in the humans who fought with honor. Earth's actions grew stronger. One by one, outposts went quiet. One by one, stations gave up. No one wanted to fight anymore. Even some Czarn officers began to turn away. They could feel the guilt in their bones. The attacks were not violent, but they were sharp. They made the Empire feel small. They made the mighty feel weak. At one secret lab, the lights blinked out. The machines froze. On the main wall, a soft line of text appeared: "Stop now or lose more." It was not a threat. It was a warning, and everyone in that room believed it. No army had arrived. No giant weapons had landed. But the Empire was shrinking piece by piece. Earth had done this with care. Every strike had a purpose. Every move had meaning. People on other planets began to notice. They started asking questions. Why had the Zarn killed those 10? What had they been afraid of? What had Earth really done to deserve such loss? And as those questions grew louder, the Zarn began to fall silent. In their capital city, leaders sat in quiet rooms looking at screens that no longer worked. Files had been changed. Lights flickered with messages from Earth. One even played a video, short clips of the 10 humans laughing, working, smiling. A final message played at the end. This is who you took from us, and this is who we are. Across the galaxy, people shared that video. It was soft and calm, but more powerful than any missile. The strong and quiet attacks had done what no war could do. They had broken the Empire's pride. They had opened the eyes of its people, and they had reminded the galaxy that Earth was not to be stepped on.